Okay, I'm going to get started. Thank you so much for joining me for today's webinar. It's chicken and egg problem is kind of what I'm calling this. And it's, I know it's a problem that's only relevant to very specific people in very specific types of organizations, but it's something that's bothered me as an issue for a very long time. So that's why I felt like I really wanted to dive into it. So I want to just start by introducing how this problem first was made known to me. And this was quite a few years ago, and I was brought in for a meeting with a nonprofit organization that I had never heard of. And it was in the medical referral space. And I, was really blown away by how they were helping people. And they were talking about how they saved this person's life. And this person said, oh, if I wouldn't have met you, you wouldn't have saved my life. And then the conversation veered to marketing, as it tends to do when I'm in the room. And they said, oh, we don't do marketing because, we get too many phone calls. And I don't know if I had the guts to say it, but I'm thinking to myself, you're telling me that you're saving lives, but you're basically hiding. The meeting was in their basement office, and so you're hiding, and there are people out there whose lives you can save and who possibly you can help, and you don't want to get out there and tell more people. And I was kind of horrified, but I pushed it to the back of my mind. And then the longer I worked with nonprofits, the more often this kept coming up, where I'd be working with organizations who are doing incredible things, helping people with medical issues and infertility and just tremendous needs. And they kept saying, oh, we can't, we don't do advertising. There's too many people who need us. And I was just, over the years, every time I heard it, there's more and more baffled. Imagine if you had a company that came up with a really great product and they're like, oh no, we have too many customers. No, if you have a really great product and people really need it, then, oh, thank you, Rabbi Schusterman. Hopefully this is a little bit better. If you have a lot of people who really need your product, then you get it out there in front of as many people as you can. But for nonprofits, it's really tricky because number one, just getting your name out there is expensive. So, if you're an organization that's small and needs to scale, then you have this issue of where do you put the money? Do you put it into awareness? Do you put it into operations? And then you want to ask for support. You want to get financial, you want donations, but people are like, we don't know who you are. So that is what the topic is. This is not going to be long. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, or we can, I can unmute people afterwards. But I want to get through a few really high level points just to maybe change the way that you think about this. So number one, the first question I would say is ask yourself is, do you really know the long-term vision of your organization? A lot of organizations, even the really big ones, kind of started out of a need, out of a passion, and it just sort of took on a life of its own, where this person called to now we do this, and this person called to now we do this. But no one really has clarity of what the organization should be doing in the long term, what they want the organization to look like. And to me, that is the number one thing that you need to know before you make any kind of decision about scaling, about marketing, is where exactly you hope to be. If you don't have a goal, if you don't have a destination, you will never, ever get there. And I like to use the metaphor of an airplane. If a pilot, goes 1 degree to the right, he lands up at a completely different destination. So if that destination is not crystal clear, you don't know if any of the things that you are trying will get you there. So the question is, when we talk about what the long-term vision is when we say scaling, do you need to scale? If you're currently at capacity, is that all that the organization should be doing? Because there are other ways to fill the needs of other people. You don't have to become a multi-million-dollar organization with hundreds of employees, but you do have to have this idea of what you ultimately want to become, what the need is. And once you have that decision made, then you can have a lot of clarity about what the steps will be to get there. So obviously, I'm assuming that it is understood to anyone who's listening that you will always have the opportunity to do behind the scenes fundraising. So go over to people and explain to them what you're doing and how they can support you. So this conversation is not addressing that. I am assuming that you know about that, and we can talk more about it if you have any questions, but we're really going to talk about what's happening in the meantime. In the meantime, while you are on the way to scaling or not scaling, whatever decision you decide to make, or in the meantime, while you're doing behind the scenes fundraising and cultivating relationships with donors, this is in the meantime, what do you do in the public eye? So question number one that we asked ourselves was, what is our long-term vision? Question number two is, what is your mission? So this seems obvious. We know our mission. You might be surprised. You can speak to, we've done this in my agency, doing research for clients, speak to different people within the organization, and none of them have the same story about what the mission is. So the mission needs to be very, very, very clear and very, very necessary. If your mission overlaps with 10 other organizations doing the same kind of work, it's going to be really, really hard to get the kind of support and awareness that you need, because people are going to see it and they'll be like, oh, I just gave to that organization that does this. So you really want to be clear about what your mission is. And the mission is the how to the vision, in case that's not clear to you. Your vision is what the world looks like when you've achieved your goals, but the mission is that journey that is getting you there. So you have to be really clear when I say clear on your mission, is clear on the how. How are you helping people do what they need to do? And is that how filling a need? Or is that how just, somebody else screaming into the abyss, like, oh, we need to raise money for XYZ. And once you have that answer, that is how you start really answering the question of, we have this problem. No one knows who we are. If we tell people who we are, we're going to have more calls that we can handle. But unless we get the financial support, we can't handle more calls and we can't help more people. So once you look at your mission, that's how you start answering the question. Is most organizations tend to think that they can only fill their mission in one way. Like, this is the way we fill our mission. We do this service for this type of people. But once you actually look at what it is you're trying to accomplish, you might be surprised and you can see like, hey, there are other ways that we can do this. And I'll give you some examples in a minute. But, the one thing that I get a lot of times is, oh, we don't have time. We don't have time. We're just, people call and we don't have time to do anything else. But there are things that you can do that take very, very little time, maybe a little bit of upfront time. So if you have no time, you could have something on your website, for example, that is supporting the people that you help, even if you can't help them right now. A resource, a guide, links, the people who are having difficulties that you cannot necessarily do the help on them one-on-one, but you can guide them. Go on our website, there's a lot of resources. Or you can refer them to another organization. You could say, you know what, this organization, they help people like you. Go click, contact this person, tell them we sent you, they can help you. Or, I have this, I know this person who went through what you went through and they can provide a lot of support. Our organization doesn't have the funds and the capacity to give you what you need right now, but there are, this person really might be able to guide you. So I want to quickly share my screen and just show you an example of Feeding America and how they do this. So Feeding America, they help with hunger, and there's food banks all over where they give people who can't afford food. But if you go to their website and you go to need help, find free food and groceries, you can put in your zip code, find your local food bank. You could apply for SNAP benefits. They tell you about all different kinds of federal programs that could help. There's a tremendous amount of resources. So let's say somebody doesn't live right near a food bank. So they can just throw up their hands and say, sorry, we can't help you. But no, they are really thinking about the actual person and what the need is, and they're helping them that way. So that's question number 2. So we said, what's your vision? What's your mission? And how can we help people beyond our initial thought of how we provide services? Third question, you may not have thought of, you may have thought of this, but can volunteers help? So there are some organizations that have built-in volunteer opportunities, such as like Tomkei Shabbos type of organizations. It's great. People come, they pack boxes, but there are so many other opportunities to bring volunteers in. And I know a lot of organizations, they kind of say, oh, we can't deal with them. They're so complicated. There's a lot of drama. They need someone to manage them. And I get it. I really, really do. And everyone is already wearing like a lot of hats. However, I would encourage you to rethink your approach towards volunteers, because volunteers can help in 2 very significant ways. They can provide services that you might not have the internal capacity to provide. And at the same time, they can become ambassadors, because when someone volunteers their time, their talents, their skill set for an organization, that develops a really, really strong connection, much more than someone who just writes a check. And even if you are emailing that check writer and you're saying, oh, look how much you helped, it's not the same as volunteers. Volunteers get to experience it on the ground. So they can become ambassadors for your organization and help scale even further. So there are things that they can do. They can help you with, the immediate delivery. So if it's like a Tomkei Shabbos box, they can help with box delivery and packing. That's very obvious. But they could also help administrative, if having someone in the office doing administrative work would help free up resources, that could be great. They can bring specialized skills, legal skills, photography skills, design skills, anything that would help you with scaling. It's really okay to put out there saying, our organization does so much for the community. We're looking for people who are interested in giving back. And you might be really surprised by how many people will raise their hands to help. They can assist with fundraising efforts. I mean, this is done pretty often in terms of crowdfunding campaigns, but they could also help you just share the message of your organization if you empower them, showing up at events and spreading the word. And there's just so many different ways that volunteers can potentially help with this issue. So I want to share my screen again and show you this organization here. This is the American Heart Organization, and they have all of these volunteer opportunities. You go on their website. I can share links afterwards. And do you want to help advocate for change? Do you want to participate in our marathon? Do you want to help women in your community live better? Do you want to host a fundraising event? And this organization is probably like a really large organization. I don't even know. They probably don't need these volunteers, but they're doing it because they want people to get involved and they want people to help them. So how much more so if you do need volunteers, because you are operating at capacity, and no nonprofit leader ever wants to intentionally turn people away. So just to recap, we said, know your vision, know your mission, look at volunteers. And the last thing I want to say is, what about these people that we can't help right now? Like we can't neglect to notice the fact that there are going to be people that call your organization and you just can't help them for whatever reason. Either they don't qualify for your assistance, or you're at capacity, or, for whatever reason, you're going to have to turn them away. And that's really, really tough. But don't not pick up the phone. Don't just hide. I would say two really important things. Number one, be really transparent with anybody who is on your website contacting you, any discussions you're having about what your capacity is, what steps you are doing to manage that capacity, what your plans are for the future, how you plan to help, all the things that we talked about. Can you be a resource? Can you provide downloadable guides? Can you advocate for the community that's struggling in a certain way? Just really explain to people, both privately and publicly, that this is not something that you take lightly, and it's something that's really serious to you, and you really are going to get in touch with them when and if an opportunity arises that you can help. So to that end, I would say it's really important to keep a wait list. So wait list sounds very like, I don't know, Apple's new iPhone, very elitist, but it's not a wait list in terms of like the fact like, oh, you stay in this waiting room until we have. It's a wait list in terms of the fact that you reached out to us and we care about you like family. You're on our list and we are going to keep updating you. And if we have information, we're going to share it with you. You'll be our first call. If we have information that might be helpful, if we come out with a new guide or resources, or if we find a new mentor or referral organization, we're going to reach out to you. You don't have to keep calling us. And that makes people feel that even if you can't necessarily give them what they called for, that you do really care. And I found this other organization that I think, I don't know if any of you have heard of Habitat for Humanity. They build homes, and for someone to qualify to get a Habitat for Humanity home built for them it's a pretty big list of what they need to do. So this organization has launched an advocacy campaign to help change policy all across the United States that actually would make homes more affordable, even without them. So I think that's just something that like really should make you stop and think of, like, their mission is to help people get their own homes, but it doesn't have to be the way they initially envisioned it, which we build homes for people. No, we also help people access affordable homes through our advocacy work, through lobbying work, through, talking to mortgage companies. And I've read really interesting case studies specifically about Habitat for Humanity. So if you are interested, then I think that it's something that you should probably look into yourself. There's a really great book called Forces for Good that talks about them a lot. And, they're really great inspiration for how you can help a lot of people without necessarily relying on only your core service as a way to help them. So that was my main points for today. I appreciate you listening. The bottom line is don't hide. Don't hide because you're afraid that your phone is going to ring off the hook, or that you're going to be turning people away and they're going to be disappointed. In the long run, you will really do so much more for your organization if you are out there publicly. And I'm not talking about running expensive ad campaigns, just sharing on your email list, on any of your social media channels, on your website, really sharing the work that you're doing, why people should care, who fits your qualifications to contact you for help. Really share and be out there and connect with your community. And in that way, you will be able to get the support that will ultimately help you scale. So that was it, short and sweet. Anybody has any questions, dump them in the chat right now. If not, I will say goodbye and send out the recording there's a lot of people who registered. It looks like they did not make it. And I really just wanted these primary points to get out there to the world. So that was it. Thank you so much for joining me today. Another minute for questions before I'll sign up. How to promote the organization. So do you want to tell me what type of organization it is? So I could be a little bit more targeted, or do you want to come on screen and share? So the ways to promote an organization is really through building connections to community. That is the long-term answer. The short-term answer is advertising and crowdfunding campaigns and the things that are easy to default to, but are very expensive and don't build up long-term connections. So really it's about connecting to the community, finding ways to network, to let people be involved, to feel involved. I don't know what type of organization you're referring to, but some organizations, for them, it could be really, really great to offer seminars, workshops, to produce guidebooks to establish themselves as a resource in terms of not just a place to call for a one-on-one service, but as a knowledge base. Religious things like scholarship for Hebrew school. So you have to really know your audience. Who are you targeting? Because one of the tricky things about marketing in the nonprofit space is there are many times that the target audience that is receiving the service and the target audience that is supporting the service do not overlap. And there's two completely separate audiences, and that's tricky for all nonprofit organizations. I do find in the Jewish world, there's a little bit more overlap than, so like there's organizations, let's say like Charity Water, who they build wells in Africa. And it's people in America who are funding that. There's zero connection. In the Jewish world, there tends to be overlaps in terms of it might be, a grandchild that's receiving the service, or, so it is a little bit easier, but it is still two completely different audiences. So you really have to be mindful when you're promoting that you're going to be promoting via two channels. So if it's something like scholarships for Hebrew school, then you need to be where, I guess it's like the Gen Zers are. You have to be on social media. You have to be connecting to them through their teachers, through their mentors. You have to be on the places that they're already looking. And then at the same time, you have to be in the places where the people who potentially care and support are. So through people that they respect or admire in places that they're reading anyway, where you can talk about your work and why it would be meaningful to them. But I think that the biggest, most underutilized resource is what I mentioned about volunteers. Because if you can get any of those people in audience A to volunteer with audience B, and then they can go out and talk about what that experience meant to them and are much more likely to become supporters, that's invaluable. And it could also be almost free for you to do something like that. So I talk about volunteers a lot as an untapped resource for marketing. Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining me. Have a great day and feel free to email me any additional questions. Bye.